The year is 1065. The place, England. This is not the savage, isolated island often imagined. It is a highly centralized, remarkably stable kingdom. In many ways, late Anglo-Saxon England is the most advanced administrative state in Western Europe. Kings rule through written writs, a system of taxation based on land known as the Geld, and a strict hierarchy of shires and hundreds. The capital, Winchester, is wealthy. The currency, the silver penny, is respected and stable. Presiding over this wealthy realm is Edward the Confessor, a king more devoted to piety than politics. Having spent his early years in exile in Normandy, his French allegiances are well known, yet his power is largely ceremonial. The true power lies in the hands of the great earls, and foremost among them, the family of Godwin. Harold Godwinson, son of the late Earl Godwin, is now the most powerful man in the kingdom. He controls immense wealth, commands the largest armies, and is the king's effective deputy. But beneath this layer of peace, a dangerous tension coils. King Edward is childless, and his passing, long anticipated, threatens to crack the foundations of the realm. The future of England hinges on who will follow the Confessor, and the waiting game is almost over. On January 5th, 1066, Edward the Confessor dies. The royal body is barely cold before the most powerful men of England, the White Nagemot, convene in London. They need an immediate successor to prevent civil war. Their choice is both pragmatic and popular: Harold Godwinson. He is crowned the very next day. A swift, decisive act that establishes the principle of English election over hereditary right. Harold is an English king chosen by English magnates to lead the English people. But the speed of the coronation is an admission of fear. Across the seas, two men stand ready to dispute this claim, armed with formidable armies and complex legal arguments. First, William, the powerful Duke of Normandy. William is a formidable political and military operator who claims Edward, years prior, had promised him the throne. Crucially, William also claims that during a visit to Normandy around 1064, Harold himself swore a sacred oath over holy relics to support William's succession. To William, Harold is a perjurer and a usurper. He immediately begins preparing a massive multinational invasion force, using the banner of papal blessing to legitimize his ambition. Second, the legendary Viking warrior, Harald Hardrada, King of Norway. Hardrada, claiming a dynastic treaty dating back to the time of Canute the Great, sees England as a lost piece of the Great Norse Empire. He has the ships, the veterans, and the bloodlust of a true sea king. And fatefully, Hardrada finds a key ally, Tostig Godwinson, Harold's own embittered brother, driven from his earldom and thirsty for revenge. Harold Godwinson knows he faces a year of unimaginable conflict. He positions his formidable professional army, the Huscarls and the Fyrd, along the southern coast, waiting for the Norman invasion. For 8 months, Harold waited in the south, but the invasion came from the unexpected direction. In September, the Great Norse fleet, perhaps 300 ships strong, sails up the Humber estuary. Hardrada and Tostig have arrived. The northern English earls, Edwin and Morcar, rush to meet them. They are severely defeated on September 20th at the Battle of Fulford Gate, just south of York. The sheer scale and ferocity of the Viking attack breaks the northern English resistance. York capitulates, offering tribute and supplies to the invaders. This is a national catastrophe. Harold, defending the realm's most valuable assets in the south, receives the news. The Vikings are victorious, and the north is falling. This news arrives just as the annual levy of the Southern English Army, having served their required term, is preparing to disband. Harold, now king of a divided and threatened country, makes one of the most brilliant and bold moves of the era. He makes a fateful decision: to march. What Harold's army accomplished next defines the man's character. He marched from London to Tadcaster, near York, a distance of nearly 200 miles, in approximately 4 days. This logistical feat of speed and endurance, averaging 50 miles a day, was unprecedented. The Norse army, scattered and complacent after their victory, were resting near the village of Stamford Bridge, awaiting the delivery of their hostages and tribute from York. They were completely unprepared for the speed of the English response. On September 25th, Harold's exhausted but disciplined army falls upon the Vikings. The battle that follows is a slaughter. Hardrada's men are caught off guard, many without their mail shirts. Though they fought with legendary ferocity, the English assault was too swift and too powerful. Harold's army systematically destroys the invaders. Both Harold Hardrada and Tostig Godwinson are killed. The Viking threat to England is extinguished forever. It is a total, decisive victory, confirming Harold's reputation as one of Europe's premier military commanders. But the victory is exhausting. His elite fighting force, the Hussars, are significantly depleted, and the energy of his fyrd is spent. And then, just 2 days later, on September 27th, the wind in the English Channel, which had delayed William for weeks, finally changes. On September 28th, William, Duke of Normandy, lands his massive professional force at Pevensey Bay, establishing a secure base near Hastings. Unlike the Vikings, William has come not to raid, but to conquer and settle. Harold receives the terrible news while resting in Yorkshire. He must immediately turn his weary, wounded army around and march another 250 miles south. Against the advice of his brothers, he does not wait for reinforcements from the newly raised levies. He fears William will devastate his personal lands in the south. Harold arrives near Hastings on October 13th. He chooses his ground brilliantly, a small, defensible ridge known as Senlac Hill. On the morning of October 14th, the two forces line up. Harold's strength lies entirely in defense, the near-impenetrable shield wall. The English troops are disciplined, wielding fearsome Danish battle axes and interlocking their shields along the crest of the slope. William's army is a true combined arms force, a continental innovation. He arrayed his army in three main contingents: archers and crossbowmen, infantry and heavy cavalry. The battle began with the Norman archers firing uphill, a relatively ineffective volley against the dense shield wall. William then launched his infantry, who met the shield wall in a brutal stationary grind. Mid-morning, a crisis erupted. The Norman left flank, composed largely of Bretons, broke under the English pressure and fled. As the English line held firm, a terrifying rumor spread among the Normans. William had been killed. William, tearing off his helmet and riding through the panicking ranks, shouted that he was alive. He rallied his men and learned a vital lesson from the near disaster. The English were ferocious, but they were also prone to breaking rank to chase a retreating enemy. William then employed the infamous tactic of the feigned flight. He ordered his cavalry to charge, engage, and then pretend to panic and retreat down the hill. The English, confident of victory, broke their shield wall, chasing the seemingly defeated Normans into the open ground. The Norman cavalry, disciplined and waiting, wheeled around and annihilated the pursuing English. William repeated this tactic several times throughout the afternoon. Each time the shield wall fractured, the Norman cavalry inflicted irreplaceable casualties. As dusk fell, the surviving English forces were pinned on the ridge summit, their shield wall reduced to a defensive knot around their king. Legend states Harold Godwinson was killed by an arrow to the eye, but historical accounts are less certain. What is known is that Harold and his brothers, Gurth and Leofwine, fell where they stood. With their leaders dead and the royal standard pulled down, the English resistance finally crumbled. William had won. The most consequential day in English history was over. William did not rush to London. He took his time, allowing the remaining English leadership to bicker and lose resolve. He was crowned King of England on Christmas Day, 1066, at Westminster Abbey. His rule, however, was not peaceful. The conquest had been won, but the pacification of the realm took 5 long, bloody years. Rebellions flared up in Exeter, the Welsh Marches, and most dangerously, in Northumbria, often supported by external forces like the Scots and the Danes. William's response was merciless. His most notorious act was the Harrowing of the North, 1069–1070. In a campaign of calculated terror, William's forces systematically destroyed farms, stores, and livestock between York and Durham. Whole populations starved or were forced to migrate. Contemporary accounts record the deliberate devastation of 50% of the houses in York. William did this to create a buffer zone so desolate that no invading army could ever sustain itself there again. To secure his power, William dispossessed virtually the entire Anglo-Saxon aristocracy. Their lands were distributed to his Norman, Breton, and Flemish vassals in exchange for oaths of loyalty and military service, formally imposing the continental system of feudalism on England. In 1086, he commissioned the Domesday Book, A vast, meticulously detailed survey of every piece of property, every farm, and every person in England. It was a staggering administrative achievement designed to record who held what, from whom, and what it was worth. It was the ultimate, unambiguous assertion of royal ownership and control. There was no ambiguity. This was William's England. The Norman conquest was not merely a regime change. It was a genetic mutation of the English state, culture, and language. The most visible change was the architectural revolution. The timber halls of the Anglo-Saxons were replaced by hundreds of huge, intimidating Norman castles. First, the rapid-build motte and bailey structures, then the massive permanent stone keeps. These castles were symbols of foreign power, enforcing the new authority. In culture and law, Norman French became the language of the court, the law, and the ruling class, while the native tongue, Old English, was relegated to the peasantry. Over the next 3 centuries, the two languages fused, enriching English with thousands of French and Latin-derived words, fundamentally reshaping the modern vocabulary we use today. The most enduring consequence was geopolitical. Before 1066, England had been part of the Scandinavian sphere of influence. After 1066, England became inextricably linked to the continent through the vast landholdings that William and his successors held in France. The subsequent centuries of English kings fighting for control of their French territories, from the Angevins to the 100 Years' Peace War, were all direct consequences of the political accident that occurred in 1066. The conquest created the entity we recognize today, a unique hybrid of Germanic, Norse, and Latin cultures. It was a bloody, total revolution that set England on a new, unavoidable path, forever altering its relationship with the world and sealing its future as a major European power.